cannot see the aces. 1 minute. There we go. We're 3-betting. It's the same guy of still the same guy of the hand that the nut flush versus the second nut flush. But yeah, about the 4 flush runouts, depends a lot on the formation and on the formation and on the action, like single raised pot, 3-bet pot, and stuff like that. Aces here against the recreational. We're just gonna be betting small on the flop. Matostar said, interesting you call the 5-6 suited, 10-7-4 under the gun versus button on a mono board versus large stab. I personally fold that one, thinking that sizing is make any sense in theory, so would expect therefore more value. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I think it's very intuitive to realize that he should not be using the big sizing, and as we know, it's very likely to be very weighted towards value. But I thought like versus a small sizing, it's like not really close, right? It's for sure a pure continue there. And versus the big sizing, as I said, I thought it was pretty close. You just said in chat, I checked in GTO Wizard and your hand is being already indifferent. With that in mind, what would your decision be? Okay, yeah, I mean, I would definitely fold, to be honest, if I saw that it was indifferent and 0 EV. I think I mentioned in game, I thought it would, like with an open-ended, would still be a pure continue, having like still some sort of some clean outs. Obviously we're drawing dead versus value, but some like okay outs, and we obviously can bluff the river when turn goes check check, even though that is very unlikely when he bets big on the flop, because turn bet is just coming a lot more often. But yeah, man, I thought it was still close, but probably a pure call. As you pointed out, is already indifferent and a 0 EV continue in theory. So knowing that, I would definitely have folded. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Was 8-9, like 8-9 is the best open-ended, right? It's 10-7-4. Is 8-9 suited still a fold there? Not sure if you still have the sim open, but is 8-9 still a fold, and we just continue like the natural stuff, you know, like the flush draws, the 10x and stuff like that. Regarding streaming, was enjoying as well, especially for the reason you mentioned, make me feel more present, so that having the opportunity to get something for other people. Yeah, for sure, man, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Was, yeah, basically the reasons that I was also pretty excited about streaming as well. I think it's pretty nice to have this, like, to talk with people, like to maybe try to bring some value to the table, maybe try to help someone out with a thing or two, and also it's pretty enjoyable to grind itself streaming, right? So at the same time, make me realize spots I cannot explain properly are going to be the ones that I'm lacking knowledge the most. Yeah, exactly, for sure. Yeah. I think that happens naturally, right? Like on the grind when you are playing, like the spots that you have to work the most are probably the ones that you're not sure when you're in, right? Like there are spots like you just know the answer, you know that you got a c-bet here or that you got a fold here, but the spots that you like have no clue that you cannot explain, right? Is definitely the ones that you lack the knowledge the most. Yeah. But yeah, nice to see that the 6-5 suited is indifferent versus the big stab. I think I might be overcalling there perhaps, even though it's a spot that happens very rarely, right? Sorry, single raised pot, button versus big blind, 4th flush. Difference between regs and regs on that spot. Okay, so you mean when the reg is in the button or the big blind? Like, is he the aggressor or is he the big blind? And what is the line? Is like check bet, check, and then probe river, something like that. But yeah, man, I mean, regardless of the answer to that question of like the line specifically, to be honest, I don't know like from the top of my head now what is the difference between regs in that formation and in a force to flush spot. So yeah, I mean, sadly cannot give you the answer, but if I'd have to guess, I would guess in general is going to be under bluffed in the force to a flush run out, because in general, as I said, it's tough to find it's not so natural to find the bluffs. But yeah, I don't really know the answer from the top of my head, man. Rafinha Ortiz, go Pedrão, tamo together, nice Rafinha, tamo junto. Okay, pocket tens here. We're gonna be pure 3-betting versus the button, regardless of the profile. Alright, let me switch it up to the zone table. We're more likely to get action. Let's see if it's working now, the reload function. Okay, yeah, now it's working. Just reloaded, which is nice. Okay, gonna be raising pocket jacks here against the limp. Another mistake that I also see very frequently is people using like very disproportionately big sizes to raise versus a limp. I actually tested this already with the solver as well, and like usually when we do have a limp from like a recreational player, you don't really want to size up that much. And if you think about it, it sort of makes sense, because when you do have like a recreational player limping, you basically want to play like as many hands as possible in a profitable way against him, right? Especially if you're in position. And usually if you start ISOing like to 5x or 6x, you just need to ISO a very tight range, because like if you ISO the same range here for like 6x, you just get very, like you just get sort of run over, because like big blind and small blind are just gonna like 3-bet very naturally, and all of a sudden you're just like putting 5 or 6 big blinds with a hand like, I don't know, 10-9 offsuit or something like that, which is a hand that you definitely can ISO for like a 3x sizing, but you definitely cannot ISO for like a 6x sizing, you know. So usually when we want to play like as wide as possible, that just translates into not using a very big sizing in general, right? Frank Escura, both profiles are over bluffing in discontinued lines. Yeah, that is a pretty good point. I asked him about the line specifically that he was talking about as well. If it is like, I don't know, triple barrel, bet check bet, probe river, in position, out of position. But yeah, that is also another very good heuristics. Like discontinued lines are very easy to overbluff, and continued lines are tougher in general. Discontinued lines being like any line that there is a check in the middle, like bet check bet, you know, any of those lines, or like call check bet if he's on the big blind. And yeah. Mato Star 9-8 suited is a pure call in the mono board, and also top pairs are indifferent. Wow, that's sick. So I would definitely expect people to overcall. Yeah, that's definitely true, and might be a nice way to exploit nits that are going to under raise very small start to just size up with our value hands. Yeah, that might make sense. Might make sense, yeah. Even though it's sort of like, what are our like value hands? Like, are we just gonna bomb with a flush there in position? That also feels a bit weird. But yeah, I mean, as you said, very easy to overcall. I mean, I don't think I would ever consider folding a 10, and I don't think anyone would, to be honest. And as you said, 10x is indifferent, and yeah, I mean 9-8 being a pure call makes sense. I thought the same would apply to 5-6, but I guess it's just that like slightly better draw that makes the cut for 9-8 to be a pure call and 5-6 to be indifferent. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. Very easy to overcall. How much pre-flop MDA work deviations versus regs do you implement, or are you sticking to equilibrium pre versus regs for the most part? So another pretty good question. I would say that pre-flop regs play a lot closer to equilibrium than post-flop, because well, it's a lot simpler. First of all, like for you to know what you should raise in this position, or what you should 3-bet in this formation. But yeah, so general there are like a lot of less like huge leaks for you to exploit if you are playing like pre-flop versus a reg rather than post-flop. And what is the other? Or sticking to equilibrium pre versus rex? Yeah, so I would say for the most part, sticking to equilibrium pre versus rex should be showing this hand, which is a lot more interesting. So yeah, for the most part, sticking to equilibrium pre versus regs, even though there are nodes that they do deviate to the point that you can make some adjustments, but you're never gonna be making like some very extreme adjustment. It's most of the time it's just gonna be like the hands that are like indifferent in theory, or they're like a mixed continues, like I don't know, like you 3-bet small blind versus button or versus cutoff, and the guy 4-bets, for example, and you have like whatever hand is going to be a mix in theory, like queen 10 suited or some hand like that, for example, that is like a 50-50 in theory between calling and folding, and it's like a 0 EV hand, you know. And if you look at MDA and you see that people are under 4-betting in that spot, for example, I'm not saying that is true once again, but if they are, what I do is I try to just shift like the mix strategies, but I would never go as far as like shoving queen 9 suited or folding ace king or anything like that, you know. There's no real deviations that they make that is big enough for you to make those adjustments. But yeah, I would say mainly stick very close to equilibrium with some small adjustments in the hands that are like 0 EV or that are indifferent in theory. But yeah, excluding raise first in deviations in late positions, yeah. Not entirely sure what you meant with that, but do you mean that like people deviate in the raise first in, or do you think that like we deviate like raising wider in late positions? I think we can fold this versus the big sizing, similar to the spot that, oh, I just timed out with pocket jacks in the Zoom table. That's lovely. But yeah, similar to the spot that Mato was talking in the chat, I think especially when a recreational player uses a big sizing there on the flop, he went for 75. I think our hand is already going to be very close to 0 EV there in theory. And in practice, I think it's definitely fine to overfold those 0 EV hands there, but very close. I would not fold with the backdoor flush, but that was like the only combo that did not have a backdoor flush. So I think that one is a fine fold in general. And yeah, very sad that I timed out with pocket jacks in the Zoom table. I opened a hijack and cut off 3-bets, and I just timed out and folded. That is another pretty tough thing about playing on Bodog. You just have like 0 time bank in the zone games. You have like 10 or 15 seconds to make a decision. And we have a question, Quantus, how many buy-ins can a player make in a month? Yeah, man, I mean, another very tough question to answer, and I think it's impossible, to be honest, to answer that, because it's just so dependent like on your win rate and your volume, right? Is the only two factors that go into the formula. So how many buy-ins do you win just depends on how high is your win rate and how much volume are you putting in with that win rate. But I would say in general, like on average, a very rough number would be 30 buy-ins. So like a reg who is like winning is going to make on average 30 buy-ins. Obviously that is not like a perfect answer, and as I said, it's going to be very dependent from player to player. Over here we have an interesting spot as well. I opened this king 7, he called, I c-bet small on the flop, which is going to be a mix, and then I went for the double barrel and he folded. And yeah. King 10 just a fold, button versus cutoff. And let me open up the Zoom table once again because it was not working, the reload option. Let me see if it is now. Okay, should be good to go. Yeah, there it is. King 9 once again, even versus the 2.5x on these positions I would be folding, versus the 3x is even simpler. 6-7 fine open here under the gun. But yeah, man, I mean, tough to say about the amount of buy-ins. If you have like a big enough sample on your like whatever stakes you play, that would be very easy. You just gotta figure out what is your win rate on average, and then you just gotta multiply that for your volume, and there you go. That's the answer of how many buy-ins you're making, right? But yeah, in general, I think 30 buy-ins is pretty reasonable. 6-7 here, I think it's gonna be pretty close, but it plays out very easily versus a check. We still have like a very decent amount of showdown value. We could bet and sort of merge this hand into a bluff. Same thing for the river. We can still go for a bet here, try to attack some pocket 8s, pocket 9s, pocket 7s type of hands like king 6, but I think checking and taking our showdown value is pretty okay. He did have 10-9. King deuce here is very close if we want to overlimp or not. 4 ways is going to be considerably worse as well than 3-way. I think it's fine to fold, but very close. Ace-Jack here, pretty fine 3-betting candidate. It's going to be a mixed strategy. Have the RNG here as pretty low, so we're going to go for the 3-bet this time. And this hand is not going to be a defend versus 4-bets. We would just be folding if we get 4-betted. But yeah, sort of a low frequency 3-bet in theory there. Not super high, but definitely a mix. Queen 9 here just a fold versus the cutoff. Would be 3-betting Queen 10. And yeah. So far we're like, I think exactly break even for the session. We were up quite a bit, but then we lost 200 big blinds in that nut flush versus second nut flush versus our friend on the other table. But yeah, other than that we didn't really had any huge pots. We had an all-in pre-flop with ace king suited like I think 10 minutes ago versus pocket 10s that we ended up losing as well the flip. But yeah, I think we were up like 3 buy-ins and then we lost 3 buy-ins back in those 2 hands, so I think we're exactly break even. Ace king here is a good hand on the button, gonna raise it up and be 4-betting versus 3-bets. There we go, we did get the 3-bet. Sizing here is not gonna be very big, it's not gonna be, it's usually something close to like 50%, which is gonna be something close to this, I believe. It's gonna be the correct sizing-ish. Just like, I mean, as long as you don't go like as small as a click or as big as 3x, you're not gonna be making a mistake here in terms of sizing. And versus a shove, obviously it's a very easy decision, and versus a call we just play post flop. I think on this board we're gonna have a very high frequency c-bet in general, and might even be fine to simplify and range bet. In terms of sizing, I think we're just gonna be betting small here in general. 15-20%, anything like that seems fine. And yeah, versus a check raise we have a very tough decision. Like, I think click should be a sizing used quite a bit. And yeah, we also have a very close decision here on the turn. Shoving might accomplish a thing or two here. We might target some pocket 10s, pocket 9s type of hands. But I think overall, like the best flush draw that we have here, like ace king suited, we still have some showdown value. Villain should still have some ace queen in there. And usually I think this specifically, like ace king here, is going to play rather passively on the turn. We also like sort of are going to not forced to have, but it's good to have some flushes like in the check back node, and I think this one is like the best one to be checking back. Obviously, I mean, there's no decision on the river, and yeah, as we said, like we dominate those type of hands like the king 10 that he had there, so usually on those spots we can check with the solver later. But I think what's gonna happen is like that also happens like in 3-bet pots and even on single raised pots. Like the better the flush draw you have, usually like the very best ones are the ones that play the most passive, you know, because usually that means that you do have a little bit of showdown value, and as I said, you do need some flush draws in the checking range as well. So I think that one fits pretty well into it. We still dominate like those broadways that he floats, some ace queen type of hands that he can float there, like ace 10 suited. So we have showdown value. It's good to have some flushes in the check back node, and yeah, but obviously like I don't think it's ever gonna be like a blunder if you bet that on the turn, but I think it's pretty nice to have it in the check back range as well. And obviously, I mean, yeah, very fortunate river for us. We would probably be losing the hand if we don't improve on the river, because he would definitely bluff the king 10, right? Okay, pretty good turn here, and flop obviously. Turn is close if we want to be over betting or not. He can have some ace 4, maybe even some 4-6 suited. I think overall disclose if we want to overbet or not. I'm going to go for the pot sizing. We're also playing against the small blind, not the big blind, so it should be a little bit of a tighter range. And yeah, river obviously we check now. We no longer have, we just have like kings and fives with no kicker, so we lose to all king X. Well, happily the river wasn't a club, otherwise we would have another nut flush versus second nut flush situation. Should be pretty sad. I think we just fold this queen jack here. Oh, sorry, this queen jack versus the 4x. The recreational player limped and this guy 4x'd. Like, this is a good example, by the way. We were discussing earlier about like zoom versus rag tables and game selecting. So Vinny coach, good luck man, English on point. Thanks man, thanks for the good luck and the compliments. And yeah, like this is a very good example. Like I'm on this rag table here on Bodog, and there is exactly 3 recreational players. Like this guy is playing 60, 32, 11 on the HUD in 150 hands. So like it's literally insane how high the, like I would, if I have to guess, I would guess like any rag here is gonna have a win rate of like at least like 15 to 20 big blinds per 100 in this table, like with 3 fishes, one of them playing 60% of hands. This guy, by the way, this 57 big blinds guy, he's playing like 76-6 in 35 hands. It's obviously like a nothing sample, but it gives you an idea of how he's playing. So like you obviously you can never get a table as good as this like on Zoom. Of course you can get, but it's just gonna be for one hand, right? And the next hand you're in another table. So the fact that you're able to table select and get a table like this just makes like your win rate so high. Like if you look at, like, as I said, like big databases, and you see like the win rate of a rag in a table with 3 fishes, it's gonna be insane. You know, it's gonna be like at least 15 big blinds, and if not like 20 or 30, depending on how bad the fishes are. So like you can never get tables this good playing Zoom and win rates as high as this. Obviously it's very hard to find a table with like 3 fishes playing very loose, but when we do find, like, it's crazy how good the win rate is. Let's jump in here with the ace queen, where we're gonna be raising in the cutoff. And we also have a hand that we're playing in the zone table. I'll show it in a minute. Ace queen here. This board is gonna be not gonna be a range bet by any means. We're gonna have a lot of checks. Ace queen is gonna be one of the hands that are very high frequency checks here. We don't really accomplish that much by betting. It really sucks to get check raised, so yeah. Turn is also close. I don't think it's a pure delay c-bet here with ace queen specifically, but I think we can go for it. RNG is also on the lower side. I have it at 40 right now, so definitely going to be delay c-betting. This is a turn, by the way, that we could actually have some bigger bets here, potentially even some overbets, but I also think the 60% sizing is fine. On the paired river, I'm not really gonna bluff ace queen here. We still have like very little showdown value, but we do have some. We beat like some ace high flush draws type of hands. We beat ace jack, which is a hand that probably is in there a lot as a check call on the turn. So not really gonna bluff. He's not really gonna be folding a lot of 10x or king x in this line. So yeah, apparently queen jack we also beat, but that hand should not be a check call very often. But yeah, that just goes to show you about the showdown value that we have there, and that we don't really need to bluff. This hand here, we're playing on the other rag table against 2 recreationals. We ISO the limp here from the hijack, and we got this flop. We're not going to be range betting by any means, but my hand seems like a pretty good candidate here to bet. We block some continues. We have some backdoors and some equity when called, and yeah. But by the turn, I'm just going to be checking this and realizing my equity. I think our fold equity here on the turn versus 2 recreational players when they both call the flop is extremely low. So I think we can just we don't need to worry about like bluffing all that much here and just sort of capitalizing on our value hands. Still, we can bluff like some very good bluffs and some higher equity stuff, but yeah, my hand I would just check back always. And I don't really think we bluff river. I think it's pretty unrealistic at this point to like bet big and get them to fold ace-x. We have like probably, I don't know, like 10 to 20% of showdown value here, maybe more towards 10. So we don't really win here on showdown that often, but we win sometimes. But yeah, overall I think it's fine not to bluff. Like, yeah, this guy had 8-6 offsuit, you know, so very easy. This guy could have like a 9 and we would be good here. And once again, don't really expect him to really fold ace-x on that discontinued line. But yeah, maybe a little bit more than 10% showdown value. Maybe that was a little bit on the lower end, but yeah, just trying to say that we have some showdown value, but not a lot. And yeah, I mean, guys, we're gonna be we're reaching towards the end of the stream. We've been live for like 2 hours and 10 minutes now. So very soon we're gonna be doing the GTO Wizard giveaway. So if we're tuning in now, make sure that you stay tuned in for the giveaway. All you have to do is type GTO Wizard on the chat when the time comes. I'll let you guys know when the giveaway is happening, and then you just type GTO Wizard in the chat, and then you're gonna be participating. As I mentioned earlier, we're gonna be giving away 3 licenses today on the stream. And if you guys don't know GTO Wizard, make sure to check it out. It's probably, if not the best, definitely one of the best softwares to use nowadays to study. So very, very insane value to be giving away 3 licenses here, and if you manage to win, that is also a very big value. Are you making max exploit deviations in bluff catch spots? Call folding all catchers when MDA dictates the spot is over on a bluff, or folding bluff catchers pure if you know villain gets to bluff range at equilibrium? So about the second part of your question, I think especially for river spots, most of the times when you do make a deviation, like if you're on the river and you are in position with the bluff and you node lock that out of position is overfolding, that will almost always translate into bluffing all bluffs in position, because it's a very sensitive thing. Like bluffing is 0 EV, right? Bluffing is always, not always, there are some exceptions, but in general, bluffing is a 0 EV play. In the solver, if you take a look, like in a triple barrel node, all your EV comes from your value hands, right? Like the hands that you go bet as value, and then the hands that you go bet as a bluff are always going to be like very, very close to 0 EV. Once again, there are some exceptions. There are some boards that when bluffing is not natural, you need to start bluffing like some second pair, some third pair, some pocket pairs that have some showdown value, and in those spots those bluffs are like plus EV, because they are not 0 EV as checks, right? They have some EV on the checking line, so for them to bluff, they need to have a higher EV than checking. But in general, bluffing is 0 EV, but if you node lock the other player to overfold, then bluffing is no longer a 0 EV play, right? Because that guy is not defending the correct frequency, so all of a sudden bluffing becomes a profitable play, and then the solver is just going to shift all the bluffs into pure bluffing. So that's usually what happens. And about the first part of your question, are you making max explode deviations in bluff catch spots? It's tough to say in general, but I would say in general is tough to make like those, as you said, like those max deviations in terms of like folding everything against a bet in a specific spot, especially because most of the times, even if the person in position is under bluffing, there are some bluff catchers that might be like so strong as a bluff catcher, like they just have so like good properties that they're still gonna make it into a call, right? Like maybe you have like a bottom set in a spot that there is a flush on the board, or you have like top 2 pairs, or not top 2 pairs, but you get the point. Like there are spots that you have such a good bluff catcher that is like a pure call in theory, you know. And by the way, the same goes for bluff catching. That bluff catching is usually a close to 0 EV play because you only beat bluffs, right? But once again, there are some bluff catchers that are those that are like not indifferent in theory. They're like pure calls with a very decently high EV. That I think those ones become a little bit dangerous to like mess around. And if you start folding all of those, then you might start getting into trouble, because as I said, like even if a person is under bluffing in a line, you might still have a profitable call or like a slightly plus EV call with certain bluff catchers. So I would say very rarely going for like max explode deviations in bluff catching spots in terms of like folding absolutely everything. I think what you can do is like for sure, this by the way, sorry, we're gonna be calling the river here. I'll talk about the line afterwards, but okay. But yeah, what you can do and what I think you should do, like if you know that a line is under bluffed, I think definitely folding all the like marginal bluff catchers and the very like indifferent ones and the 0 EV ones. I think that's definitely gonna be the way to go, and that's definitely gonna be the correct adjustment. But I would not go as far as like folding everything and folding like maybe even a hand that like you have bottom 2 pairs and there's a slight chance you dominate value. You know, that is when I think you start to get into some trouble, especially on non-anonymous sites. But yeah, once again, a very tough question, but to answer, I would say very, very rarely going for a max explo, but very often if you know the line and if you know that your hand is like indifferent or a very marginal bluff catcher at best, like very often deviating in that part of the range. Not sure if the answer was clear enough. And for you to know that, like that there's no other way, you just have to study the grids, and you have to know theory, and you have to have a good understanding of the spot and of your own range and of the range versus range interaction for when you are on the river. You're gonna know, okay, like I get to the river with this range. This is gonna be those are gonna be my bluff catchers. This hand falls into that category or this category. This hand's gonna be very marginal, or this is a very good call. And then when you have a very high understanding of theory, you have a better idea of where you can deviate, you know, in terms of bluff catchers. But yeah, there might be some lines, like some very crazy lines, if you look at MDA, that are just like massively underbluffed. And then, I mean, sure, if that's the case, it doesn't really matter what you have, you just fold, right? But I would say that's quite rare. So in general, not going like super max explo, but always trying to deviate according to your knowledge from theory and from MDA. Yeah. Okay, let me shift here.